Okay, so we have one US border town that's planning to throw us a party. They did it last year, and this was at the beginning of last year when Canadians were still kind of on the fence of whether or not they're going to go to the United States. They're planning it again this year. But my question is, do you think there will be that many Canadians that will go down to Port Angeles this year as compared to last year? I have a report that's going to talk about all this, and I'd actually like everyone's opinion on this. Because they say their goal for this isn't about the money, but it's about making sure that our hearts don't harden. So I'd really like to hear the community's thoughts on this. And I also have a report that interviews Kersten Hillman, the now former ambassador to the United States. And she was asked whether or not things between Canada and the US will ever be the same again. So we'll review that as well. I do apologize for the co-host. She's very active today. Hey, over here. Eat this. Here. Today's backdrop comes from Brianna, from our Discord server, who sent over this photo on Discord of the Rideau Canal in Ottawa. Now, I've been skating since I was a kid, and it's always been indoors. And I don't think there's ever been a time where I've actually skated outdoors. So I think this is going to be one of my bucket list things. Thanks, Brianna, for posting this up in the Discord server. Now, one quick thing before I start. The petition to have our Canadian media reviewed for foreign investors has closed, and it has finished at over 17,000 signatures. So I want to thank everybody who has taken the time to sign the petition, because I do think it's a good idea that our Canadian media has the best interest in Canadians when they are reporting, not the bias of any outside entity. Okay, let's get started with the first report.
Port Angeles threw quite the party for Canadian travelers last February, and this year it's planning on a repeat. As CTV's Anna McMillan shows us, the goal is to prevent people's hearts from hardening as tension between Canada and the United States remains high.
Port Angeles is extending a party invite to Canadians with a caveat. You don't have to come, but if you do, you'll be welcomed with open arms and a double-double.
The point of this thing is not to be soliciting Canadians to come south right now. Absolutely not. It is about demonstrating our affection for our neighbors to the north.
Okay, so this is an angle that I've actually never heard before. They want to support us, but they're not telling us to come down. Which I do give them credit for. Because most of the times what we're hearing, like that tourism official in Rochester who wrote us a letter, a love letter as she said, basically stating that we will be safe once we are in her city, but she can't control what happens at the border and just make sure we have our documents. That didn't seem too reassuring to me or authentic. It seemed more like they just want us to come down and spend our money. But this time around, they're not asking us to risk coming over the border. They just want to show support, which I do respect.
On February 19th, the small American city is hosting a repeat of last year's greeting party for Canadians coming off the Coho Ferry. They're calling it Port Angeles Loves Canada 2.0.
We're doing this in an effort to humanize a little bit ourselves, right? You're watching news stories play out, the narratives that are playing. I don't feel represented in those narratives. I am disgusted and outraged with what is happening, right?
Last year, Canadians stopped traveling to the United States en masse, following U.S. President Donald Trump's jibes about making Canada the 51st state.
I think it's getting worse. Each and every day, something new happens.
In recent weeks, the world has watched the U.S. threaten Greenland and pluck Venezuela's president from his country.
Now, I've been accused of generalizing all US citizens together. And to be fair, sometimes I have. It's tough for me not to sometimes because there's just so much anger towards the country. But I do have to remember and realize that there are people in the US that support us and are not supporting the US government. I always refer back to my friends in the US who are fighting the regime, except for my Nevada friend. He's a bit of an odd one. But also the viewers from the US and those that I have met in the Discord server. All of these US citizens help to keep me grounded. Which is why when I see the effort from these citizens in Port Angeles, and the fact that they're saying that they don't need us to visit them, it's a different angle that I haven't seen before, and I do give them credit for that.
They've also seen myriad tariff threats and 2 American citizens killed by ICE agents.
Definitely, it's having an effect.
That Canadian travel insurance broker lives part-time in Florida. He says snowbirds are still traveling to their American properties, but he's seen far fewer people at tourist hotspots.
You can't pinpoint if it's strictly the anti-U.S. sentiment, or it's the low Canadian dollar, or it's a combination of the two. And I lean towards a combination of the two.
Okay, what's your opinion on this? Do you think it's a combination of the exchange rate and the rhetoric? This guy's been featured before, and he's always had a bit of a pro-USA sentiment to him. I don't agree with it. It just revolves around the whole exchange rate excuse, which I think is bullshit. Because if the Orange McNugget never happened, I know a lot of us would still be going to the United States. I'm the perfect example. So let me know in the comments below if you believe it's a 50-50 when it comes to exchange rate and the rhetoric.
Data from Environics Analytics says at the end of 2025, domestic travel in Canada was up 9% compared to the year prior, an increase of 6.9 million trips.
Unfortunately, the relationship with Canada has become a partisan talking point, which for a border community, it seems unreal.
He says Port Angeles did okay last year by shifting its marketing focus to domestic tourism. It's also encouraging Americans to go to Vancouver Island.
This isn't about money. This is about hearts and minds. This is about the relationship between two communities.
He says the invite will still be open if Canadians want to wait until Trump is out of office.
Now, I am glad that they're encouraging Washington State citizens to visit Canada. We don't hear that very much. But this is bigger than just two communities. Because what we found out in the past year is that some of these communities that we used to be close to, I'll use myself an example. I used to be close to Bellingham and Blaine, just because I visited a lot. They may have been places that I used to go to. But I'm quickly finding out that there are a lot of people in these communities that do support the Orange McNugget and his movement. And this is just me, but the fact that I know there are citizens in Bellingham and Blaine, I'm just using them as an example, did vote for the Orange McNugget. I would not feel comfortable spending my shopping and tourist money in their city, knowing that some of these shops that I might be shopping at, the owners, may have potentially voted for the Orange McNugget. So while I appreciate the sentiment from the people in Port Angeles, it is appreciated, but it is not going to be enough for me to go back. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me, or if this is going to be enough for you to head back to the United States. Now I want to move on to the next segment. It's an interview with Kersten Hillman, the now former US ambassador to the United States. That job's got to be one of the most stressful jobs in Canada, and I don't blame her for wanting to spend more time with her family. But she was asked the question, do you think Canada and the US relationship will go back to normal? And I wanted to share it with everyone. Now I'm only going to show a part of the discussion, but if you want to see the full interview, I'll leave a link in the description below.
Do you think the Canada-US relationship can recover? I know Canadians sitting at home are so concerned about what's going on in this country. You must hear that all the time.
I think the Canada-US relationship has changed and will not go back to what it was, at least for a very long time, if ever. I think people talk about, just a loss of trust, maybe. And that's a hard thing to build back. Again, this country is vast and diverse, and there are millions of Canadians and Americans who do things together every day: business, relationships, education. We have, we study together. We do all sorts of research together. There's all sorts of things. Our armed forces work together. Our security services, our policing services. So there's tons of things that we do together every day, all day, and we will continue to do that. But I think Canadians are approaching the relationship as a whole in a little more clear-eyed and perhaps a little bit more wary.
No, I'm not afraid to admit it. I've had my head in the sand up until this year. No, wait, last year. Beginning of last year when the Orange McNugget took office. I was oblivious to a lot, and I probably trusted more than I should have. And I also spent more time in the United States when I should have probably been visiting other locations. But you can't change the past. But what my point is here is that, yes, I have kind of woken up on this, to the point where I started my own YouTube channel. But I think for many Canadians, like me, this was a very, very good wake-up call for us. And I finally got my head out of the sand. And I do hope that more Canadians, the ones that are apathetic about things, start to realize the same thing as well.
But it's good for us. It's good for us because we need to be sure that we are putting Canada and Canadian interests first, that we are ensuring that we're doing as much as we can for ourselves and not taking for granted some things that have been stable down here for a long time.
Where's that sort of line? Because you talk about, in one sense, this sort of being a prodding for Canada to do better, and the Prime Minister certainly has talked about expanding trade relationships beyond the United States. But on the other hand, you've got the Treasury Secretary and the State Department sort of entertaining Alberta separatists at the same time and getting involved in domestic Canadian politics. And so where's the line between genuine concern and this sort of wake-up call to do better as Canadians?
Well, I think we do both. I think that Canadians should be, I was saying how, there's a real focus here in the United States on America doing things for Americans. And there's a focus on that in Canada too, right? There are a lot of things, as I say, I think there are opportunities that have provided have been provided to us, or impetus. There's been an impetus in Canada to maybe make some changes that we could have made a while ago that are important for our own economy. Interprovincial trade, large infrastructure projects, doing as much as we can to be our own best customer.
I think it's about time that Canada does start to think for itself. Way too many years, decades, generations, we've relied on the US, and we've helped them on their policies, which may not have been best for Canada itself. So I am glad that Canada is doing things that will benefit us, creating partnerships around the world that have nothing to do with the United States, breaking the China EV tariffs that the US basically wanted us to do, potentially purchasing the Sweden Gripen jets, and going against what the United States wants us to do. These are moves that I think Canada needs to continue on moving forward.
Those kinds of policies are really, really important. Yes, there's trade diversification. Yes, there's investment diversification. But first and foremost, the kind of strong feelings of Canadian pride that have come out of this, I think, are excellent and important for us. As to how this government interacts with issues around Canadian sovereignty, I think that they would be wise to be very cautious and tread lightly there. But I guess what I would say here is I saw those comments, but I'm here every day, and my team is around this country every day and in all corners of this administration, and we are not hearing any particular interest in engaging at any broad level on these key domestic issues. I think that is, and hopefully there won't be, but there's not a lot of take up there.
Now, my question is, would they really be saying this to your face? I don't think so. When it comes to Canadian sovereignty and the interference that's happening with the United States, just in my opinion, but I don't think they're going to openly be talking about it. There's already enough evidence and statements from the US administration saying that they're already talking to the separatists. And that's enough for me to continue to keep my guard up. We can be politically correct all we want, but when push comes to shove, in my opinion, there are certain things that we really need to push back on.
As you think of your own personal situation and heading back to Canada, but also your time in the United States, what do you want Canadians to think about their American neighbors right now that extends beyond what they may see on the news and beyond what's happening just in Washington?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you for asking it, because I have been here, as you say, for 8.5 years. I've traveled this entire country. I've met every governor. I've been top to bottom, side to side. And Americans are, diverse. They are doing all the same kind of things Canadians are doing. They're on factory floors. There's farmers. There's researchers. There's people working in office towers. There's every kind of American, and ultimately they want what everyone wants. They want sort of a good life for their family. They want a good future. They want some stability, and I think that's why our ties are quite strong, right? And historically and geographically.
I agreed with this, and that's why I felt I was so close to the United States before. But after I got my head out of the sand and took the red pill from the Matrix, I started to realize that this close friendship and intertwined culture that we had wasn't something that I wanted to value anymore.
So what I would say to Canadians is it's essential that we not lose sight of the fact that this relationship has changed and will, I think, as I said, be changed for a long time. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of good things that we can do in the United States with our American friends, and that there aren't a lot of Americans who are deeply committed to the Canada-US relationship. And I will sort of give as an example this. We have had more high-level visits to Canada from senators, from CEOs, from governors in the last 8 months than I think we have had in my entire tenure. So there is a huge contingent of Americans who want to come to Canada to say, we appreciate you, we appreciate this relationship, we want to make sure it stays strong. So I think we need to have both things, a little bit of open-eyed understanding of how to best take care of ourselves, but also realize that this is a big and diverse place.
Okay, I have to disagree when it comes to the state officials and governors and whoever else that came up to Canada. There is a reason they came up, and the reason is because we are not going to the United States. And us not going to the United States is hurting their economy. We had Governor Mills and the other one from, I think, Vermont or New Hampshire, come up to Canada to assure us that it is safe to go to the United States. We also had Governor Mills telling us that we're hurting our friends in Maine and that we're not hurting Donald Trump. She's worried about her state businesses because they're not getting our money anymore. And some of these businesses actually did vote for the Orange McNugget. So why should we support them? These senators and governors and whoever else came up to Canada, they might say that they value our relationship. But in my opinion, I think they value our money more. And when that money dries up, of course they're going to suck up to Canada. I've seen way too many interviews and statements from US officials, and I can read in between the lines to know when some are truthful and to know when it's actually just about the money. And you have to wonder, after 8 years of being in the United States and seeing that this is the first time that these many senators and governors have gone up to Canada, sure, they might come up and say, yeah, they miss us and they value the relationship. But at the same time as well, that's also when the money has dried up. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me on this, or if you think I'm overreacting. But then again, this is just my take on it. I know the former ambassador is on national television and she has to be politically correct. But then again, I'm just giving my point of view from a regular Canadian. Okay, that's all I got for today's video. Let me know your thoughts and comments below. I'm really curious to hear what everyone says about this one. If you found any value in anything I said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian perspective, help out my channel by hitting the like and subscribe button below, and share this with your friends as well. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.